Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Learn with Anirudh. Thank you so much for your support. I hope all of you all are having a ton of fun learning all these concepts. Now, before we dive right into the heart of the concept that we are discussing today, I want to ask you guys if you've had a chance to take a look at my previous video, which is how does a machine learn? Now, since you already know machine learning involves a lot of complex concept and I've tried to simplify it down as much as possible to teach you in the most simplest way of how a machine learns. So if you haven't taken a look at this video, the link is available in the description box. So make sure to take a look at that. And another thing I want to say is that a lot of you all are watching the video. So I'm really happy seeing the progress of the channel. But your subscription means a lot to me. And as you can see from your screen right now, I have a lot of people watching the videos on the channel, but most of you are not yet subscribed. So do take a second to hit that subscribe button because it helps me immensely in getting my content out there and ensuring that it reaches a lot of people. Now, let's talk about the types of machine learning that are out there. As I just told you, if you'd watched the previous video, we had a very important key pointer there discussing the various types of machine learning about, what are the various ways in which a machine actually learns. That was fantastic, but we really need to take a deeper look at it, right? So without further ado, let's get started. Alright guys, so talking to all of you all with respect to the types of machine learning, as we had a quick introduction previously, there are three ways in which a machine learns. We have supervised learning, we have unsupervised learning, and we have reinforcement learning. Now I promise to you that you can relate to all of these types of learnings in your own life, let alone how a machine learns. So let us dive right into each one of these concepts, understand what they are, how a machine learns using that type of method. I'm going to be giving you a lot of real life examples through which you can connect better with the concept as well, right? So let's get started. First of all, we have supervised learning now. Supervised learning. When you think about it, let's take a look at the term itself, supervised learning. The term supervised or supervision, what does it mean? Supervision means that there is some sort of help that the machine is getting, or there's some sort of help that you are getting to learn. Now, all of you all who are going to college, all of your students who are going to schools, your teachers will be your supervisors, right? While you're writing an examination, while you're attending your classes, while you're learning something, I'm sure there are a lot of people who will be supervising you. Your parents could be considered as a supervisor themselves, right? So the best part here is that when you translate this exactly into the world of machine, your learning machine, if it's using supervised learning to actually understand your data, what it does is it requires a certain help to understand the data. Now in my introduction video, if you guys remember, I mentioned that your machine doesn't really understand a lot of things apart from zeros and ones unless it has been taught. Now in the case of supervised learning, that applies here as well, because your machine only understands a certain set of things unless you train it for it to understand data better. So in supervised learning, your machine requires some help, not just with how it learns, but with the data that it sees in itself. I'm going to give you an example. Consider that you and your family, or you and your friends, or you and your loved one have planned a quick vacation to Paris. You want to get away from the hustle and bustle of life. You want to go to Paris and enjoy a great cuisine, French cuisine there. Now the best part here is that you're going to love Paris, but if you're like me, there's a very good chance you might not be able to speak a lot of French apart from bonjour, right? So in that case, what do? You take the help of a person there. You have a translator who comes across with you. You take a guide wherever you go, or even better, you maybe use your phone. There are multiple applications that we have which will help you translate what someone is saying in real time. So you will have some sort of help because you do not understand the language. Now, in the case of a machine, the machine will not understand the language, the data that you provide there. So it also requires certain help, just like how you require some help on your Paris vacation. Now, you can throw in a very simple question to your computer saying, hey computer, whatever you see on your screen right now, is it a plane or is it a bird? I know some of you are inclined to say it's Superman, but I wish it was. Now, when you ask the question to it, your computer is going to give you a very simple response. It's going to say, I have no clue. Why? Why does it say it has no clue? Because again, it does not know what a bird looks like. It does not know what an airplane looks like. Of course, you can give it 100 images of airplanes. You can give it 1,000 images of birds. Unless it understands the characteristics of a bird or characteristics of an airplane, it really cannot make sense of it. So the best part here is that if you observe the image on your screen right now, with the data, we have the image data. Let's just say we have 100 birds that we're discussing right now. And each of those 100 birds, you're categorizing them as birds. So what you're giving in terms of input is also the output. Let me explain. When you're loading the images of your birds to your computer, it has no idea what it is seeing. You know it because you know what a bird looks like. But you can help your computer here in a simple way. You can say, hey, the image that you're looking right now is a bird. Look at the label that I have on the bottom that I've highlighted for you guys. As you can see, you're trying to tell the machine saying, hey, what you're looking at, you don't have to figure it out on your own. Let me help you out. Whatever you're seeing right now is a bird. Now, this label means a lot into the world of supervised learning because majority of the learning that happens here is based on a labeled data set. As in, when you're training the machine, you're giving the input alongside the output itself. Let me explain better with another example. Have you ever had a chance to be among toddlers who are learning A, B, C, D, all the alphabets? The most popular way that I've seen is they either tune into a couple of YouTube videos these days, but if you have a kid who is learning in the classic fashion, you might have seen flashcards, right? Flashcards basically have a letter and an example associated with that particular letter. A for apple, B for ball. That's how we've learned it, all those decades ago. Here as well, as you can see on your screen, U for umbrella, F for flamingo. If you realize that there is data and there is meaning associated with the data there too. We're not just saying U and just saying, we'll not tell you what U is. Or we're not just saying F and we're not telling what F is, right? We're giving a better connection to help the kid understand the data better. Similarly, in supervised learning, we give the data to the machine and we also give it a little helper. We also give it a little label to make sure that it doesn't have to spend most of its time figuring out what it is, but actually help in prediction and performing all of those activities. So that should bring you to a question, and you should be asking right now saying, hey Anirudh, so how does it actually learn if you're providing both the input and the output? We are asking a question and we're also giving the answer to the machine learning algorithm. So how does it learn then? The learning algorithm in the case of supervised learning is fantastic because here it uses all the data that it can get and all the labels it has to actually make certain guesses. It takes a look at all the pictures of the birds and figures out what a bird looks like. And since it already has the answers, since it knows for sure what a bird looks like, it can just start mapping around, playing around, learning, and eventually figure out what it looks like. And the best part here is that we can evaluate if the machine has learned correctly or not. Why? Because we already have the right answers in our hand. Now, we will not provide these answers while the machine is learning itself because we wanted to build that relationship. We want the machine to understand on its own. And over time, what really happens is that it will have a chance to map the relationship. If you've seen those graphs where, there is one plot which is very simple to look at, it's a very straight plot, and there is another plot which goes wavy around the main plot. So what it is trying to do is it is adjusting its reference, it is adjusting its learning to the main plot that we have there. Now, down the line, when we're discussing all of these programmatically, we can take a look at all of those individual algorithms. We'll take a look at all the individual ways of learning as well. Now, there are many types of supervised learning algorithms that we have, and what you see on your screen right now is the most popular and the most common ones that we use today. Be it linear regression, be it logistic regression, be it naive Bayes, or SVMs, or support vector machines as they're called, and even random forests to a good degree. Now, if you are a person who has never worked on machine learning, I am sure that you've come across these terms that you see on your screen. And these are really amazing learning algorithms that we're going to be discussing in the future videos. Make sure you guys are subscribed so you will be the first ones when I start rolling out videos teaching you guys on how each of these algorithms work, of course, in a very nice way too. Now, the best part about this is you're using supervised learning every day. The moment you wake up in the morning, your Android phone might give you a notification saying today's weather forecast is so and so. Scattered thunderstorms, 26 degrees, something like that. Now, what it is trying to do, it is actually trying to predict the weather for that entire day. Now, right at this moment, I can find out what the weather is like tomorrow. Well, tomorrow isn't really here yet, but we understand the characteristic of what creates rain, what creates sunshine, what amount of wind from which direction will affect the weather in that particular area. There is a ton of data that we have made available from the meteorological departments, through which we can put it all in our algorithms, get it to learn, get it to understand. And I'm sure that you're surprised in a way where these be it Google, be it Siri, or any other weather channel out there, they super accurately predict what the weather is like. And now you know that they use supervised learning algorithms. The next place where supervised learning algorithms are really popular is to understand how you predict the prices of houses. You might be from Delhi, you might be from Bengaluru, you might be from Bombay, wherever you are, you understand that there are certain localities, certain part of the cities where the price of the houses are extremely expensive, where the plots are really, really expensive. And if you want to understand the reason for that, it's very easy to say, hey, there's a certain celebrity who might stay there. It's considered as a posh area. Not really. There are so many factors that will create this kind of a demand supply chain. And of course, it will create a gap in the price of these houses, be it the crime rate in the area, be it the tax on the house, be it the size of the house itself, how many cars you can park, what is the amount of convenience you have, what is the schools, what are the number of schools that are nearby, how many supermarkets are close by. See, you have so much data that you can analyze all of that, churn it, and eventually say, hey, this is the reason why this house costs so much. Isn't that absolutely fantastic? Because if this fantasizes you, let me try to take you one step backwards to tell you that in the world that we are living in today, most of the data that we handle is actually unlabeled data. Now, all the glorious facts we discuss about supervised learning will not really work if your data is unlabeled. If your data is unlabeled, it has no meaning to associate, so it cannot learn. So what are we doing to fix this? Well, to fix this, we have unsupervised learning. In unsupervised learning, there is absolutely no supervision, as the name itself suggests. You're not trying to get the machine to understand what the data is by giving it the input and the output, but rather you're letting the machine figure the how. When you say, how does this happen, right? You're getting the machine to ask that question and you're getting the machine to figure it out. The learning that happens in the case of unsupervised learning happens all on the inputs and not on the outputs, because it would be very difficult to explain the output to an unsupervised learning algorithm, because it cannot connect the dots. If you say, hey, here's the picture of a bird, and that you associate that it is a bird, what does that do? It becomes a labeled data set and it becomes a supervised learning model at that moment. But if you do not say that it is a bird and you say, hey, I'll give you an image, why don't you figure out what this image is? And later when I show you other images, you can try to map what it is. Or even better, the most popular way of where supervised learning algorithms are used, as you can see from your screen, it is really the most popular and the most widely used type of machine learning that we have today. And to give you a little bit clarity, take a look at your screen right now. There are multiple images of vehicles on your screen. I'm not going to say cars because there are various types of cars and vehicles, right? So what are the types of vehicles that you have on your screen? You have a couple of sedans, 4-door cars, you have coupes, you have SUVs, you have pickup trucks, you have convertibles, you have sports cars. You have so many types of cars in the image that you see on your screen. Now what I can do is I can ask the computer, I can ask the machine learning algorithm a simple question. I can say, hey, if you can figure out what a sedan looks like, if you can figure out what a pickup truck looks like, if I give you 100 images of each of those, can you separate all of that out into different segments? Now, let me give you one more example. Let's just say that I'll give you a big basket full of fruits, right? There are a lot of types of fruits there. There are strawberries, there are avocados, there are pineapples, there's a lot of fruits there. Now, if I ask you saying, hey, can you keep all the pineapples to the left side? Can you keep all the avocados to the right side? And maybe can you pack all the watermelons to go? Can you or can you not do it? This is a simple task if you understand. You don't need to know what a watermelon look like. You need to understand what the similar characteristics of 2 or 3 pieces of watermelon is. In that way, the second it sees a piece of watermelon, even though it does not know that it is a watermelon, it can categorize it and keep it separately. The same example holds whenever you're taking a look at playing with Lego bricks. There are multiple colors of Lego bricks available, and if you have toddlers at your home, I bet you'll have a ton of Lego bricks. And Even in the simple example, you can ask yourself, hey, can I categorize these Lego bricks based on their colors? Keep all the yellow bricks to the left side, keep all the red bricks to the right side. Very simple task. It's very simple to you because you are trained to understand colors, you're trained to understand how you can categorize it and keep it into two different places. And this is exactly what we aim to teach in the unsupervised learning scenario here, because we let the algorithm cluster the data for us, group the data for us, and eventually organize all the data into multiple different pieces. And this forms the basis of unsupervised learning that we have today. Now, the best part is unsupervised learning is being used everywhere around you, even in the example that you see on your screen right now. I find a lot of people do this. As soon as you buy a new phone, you will definitely want a ton of cute phone cases to go with it, right? So you buy a new phone, you buy a lot of phone cases. Every time there is a brand new sale, you just go there. Phone cases are absolutely cheap. So you can go and buy probably 3 or 4 or 5 at a time. So what happens when you go about doing this is that every time when you shop online, these e-commerce sites, be it Amazon or be it anyone out there, they try to analyze your buying behavior, and they realize that, hey, this person really likes to buy mobile phone cases. So what it is going to do is it understands your behavior and it starts recommending you products based upon that. Every time you go to Amazon, you buy a brand new phone, it will also recommend, right? It will say, hey, people who have bought the phone have also bought a tempered glass. People who have bought the phone have also bought a brand new mobile case. How does it know? It's not a human that is sitting on the other side of it and finding out if people, as soon as they buy a mobile, they buy a cover or something like that. No, it's a machine learning algorithm that is sitting there that understands that as soon as people buy a mobile, and as soon as, if you've ever done it in the past yourself, it would have recognized that, it would have learned that behavior, and eventually it will help you quickly buy the next phone case that it knows that you might search for. Isn't that fantastic? And the best part is there are many ways of which you can achieve unsupervised learning, be it through clustering, be it through organization, or many ways. The most popular methods to go about doing it is via something called k-means clustering. We have hierarchical clustering, we have the a priori algorithm, and of course, there's a lot more ways through which you can use a tiny bit of supervised learning with unsupervised learning as well. And I didn't want to confuse you guys with all the in-depth information and jargon right now, because unless you're very clear with supervised learning and unless you're very clear with unsupervised learning, it really becomes difficult. All right? Fantastic. Now, taking a look at real world usage. Real world usage is brilliant here in the case of unsupervised learning, because every time you open up your Gmail, you realize that there are certain mails which will automatically go into the spam box. Well, how does Gmail know that it is a spam message that is being sent? It can filter automatically, right? It is not asking for your help to filter any of its content. It has the capability to figure out what might be spam. And of course, there are very rare cases where an actual genuine message can get marked as spam, but that, if you have realized over the last couple of years, has come down and down, because Gmail or Google, their own machine learning algorithms have become so intelligent that they completely understand what a spammy email looks like, what a phishing email looks like, or eventually what an email which can lead to a fraud as well. And that's the best part about unsupervised learning. If you have ever made a large transaction on your credit card or your debit card, you might get a payment failure message, and immediately there is a call from your bank saying, hey, there was a huge transaction that was initiated from your account. Did you do this? Well, if you realize that people are swiping, millions of people are swiping their debit cards right now as we speak, and it would be impossible for a human to sit on the other side to figure this out. So, unsupervised learning is used to prevent credit card frauds as well. The second someone uses your credit card in another location, now I am in Bangalore, let's say my credit card gets swiped somewhere in Norway, somewhere in the USA, people will get to the bank immediately gets to know that, hey, it's not possible. This person is in Bengaluru, but the card got used in USA, so there is something wrong with it. So they immediately block the transaction unless you approve it later on. That way, if someone eventually was trying to scam you, you will not get scammed. And you have to thank a machine learning algorithm, specifically an unsupervised learning algorithm, for this. That's fantastic, right? Now, if both supervised learning and unsupervised learning fascinated you, well, let me show you what reinforcement learning can do. This is where you can have maximum amount of relevance. Have you guys ever had a chance to train your pet dogs? If you've had a professional walk in to actually train your dog to sit, to stand, to roll over, all the basic stuff we see in the movies, well, it can work with your cat also, but you'll have to really do it at your own risk, because there's a very good chance your cat is going to claw you on your face and it's going to just run away. So basically, I asked you that question because here is how you would train your pet. First, if you have seen the instructor train the pet, the instructor will give the pet certain instructions. He's going to say, hey, why don't you give me a handshake? He's going to force, not force exactly. He's going to, go and initiate a handshake with the dog and eventually teach the dog how to give a handshake. He or she will allow the pet to actually learn to understand to provide a handshake, but the dog has no reason to give you a handshake. What he does is he gives it a reason. He says, hey, if you give me a handshake, I'm going to give you a little biscuit. I'm going to give you a little treat. So the dog has to do the task of giving you a handshake, and it knows that if it gives you the handshake, it will get a little reward. But if it doesn't give you the handshake, you might have seen that the actual trainer will not give the dog a little biscuit there, because it has to do the task to get the reward. Similarly, in the case of reinforcement learning, here we let the machine first run through the input data, and we will let it to make certain guesses, and we will let it learn on its own. The only thing that we're going to say is, hey, we're going to have certain metrics, we're going to have certain numbers through which we will track your progress of learning. What we want you to do is we want you to maximize your rewards, and we want you to minimize what you do wrong. Every time the machine learns something wrong, let's just say that you're trying to you're trying to get your computer to understand what a cat image looks like. So every time it classifies a cat as a dog, you're saying, hey, no, this is not what you think it is, and you give it a little penalty. Now, an important thing I really have to mention here is that when you're trying to penalize your computer, when you're trying to penalize your machine, it's just a mathematical number that you're trying to use there, and it will not hurt the machine in any way. But again, this is never recommended to do with your pets, right? You give it a reward or you don't give it a reward, but you do not penalize the pet for not doing it. But in the case of machine learning, we have the freedom to mess around with the computer and say, if not 0, we'll give you a -1. That really does not hurt the machine in any way. And in fact, giving the penalty to the machine will help it understand. It realizes that, oh, okay, so I want my penalties to be as minimum as possible, and I want my rewards to be as maximum as it can possibly go. And this continuous path for it to hunt, to do a mistake, go back, stop doing that mistake, learn from the mistake, and to go and learn something else is exactly the entire premise of reinforcement learning. And the best part here is that your algorithm discovers the entire path that it needs to take. It's like a small roadmap that it takes. You go to the wrong street, you come back. You go to the right street the next time. So it understands how it has to maximize the rewards. And for us who are trying to get the machine learning algorithm to work, all we care about is maximum accuracy, that it can detect something, learn something well, and prove to us in the evaluation stage that it has learned. Correct? It's simple. Let me give you one example here to tell you more about reinforcement learning. As you can see on your screen, I have an input image of what looks like a basketball. It is a basketball, you will agree. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask the computer, hey computer, what is this? Now if the computer has never seen a basketball before, it will happily give me a response and say, hey, whatever I'm seeing right now is an apple, or it's a beautiful looking banana. Well, it's neither an apple or a banana. So you give a feedback to your computer saying, no, it is not an apple, it is not a banana, learn this. It is a basketball. Now, after you say that, it relearns everything now. It understands what a basketball looks like, and it relearns, and it says, oh, okay, so what I'm seeing right now is not an apple, but it is a basketball. That relearning phase happens there. And after relearning, you have to find out if it has actually learnt it. So what you do is you give it another brand new image of basketball, and you say, hey, okay, so what is this one then? Well, as soon as you start evaluating, if your computer can give you a reinforced response to tell you that this is a basketball, you know that your machine has now learned what it is. It did a mistake of thinking that it's an apple. You gave it a feedback, and eventually it used this feedback to learn and get better. Just like how all of us have learned in our childhood, just like how we all learn on our daily basis as well. When you think about it, we ask for feedback. Now, I've been asking you guys a ton of feedback on LinkedIn, on all the social media out there, asking you about how much, what is it that you guys would love to learn and how better do you want the content to be. And in that particular case, I am also actively using feedback right now to learn and to bring you guys better content. This is exactly what happens in reinforcement learning as well. It uses its own feedback and it gets better and better every time. The best part is you can have even more relatability right now. Every time you have played a game, I think in the COVID era, Ludo was a very popular game that everyone was playing. Among Us was a very nice game. Be it any game that you play online, offline, whatever it is, every time you go head to head against an AI, against a bot, you're playing with an entity which is not a human being. How do you think that knows how to learn, right? Unless it has been hard coded to do the exact same things again and again, which never is the case, because it has to react actively to what you do in the game as well. So it has to learn what you will do, and it has to learn how to respond back to whatever it is that you're doing in the game. So in this case, understand that every time you pick up your phone next time to play PUBG, to play whatever game it is, understand that there is reinforcement learning that is actively working on the other side to bring you a better gaming experience. So this was all about supervised learning, unsupervised learning, and reinforcement learning. So let's quickly wrap it up to find out what it is that we can take away from this video. With respect to supervised learning, you have to understand that the entire way of how the machine learned was basically task driven. You gave it an input, you gave it an output, and you say, hey, can you predict what the next value will be by learning what the image looks like? In that case, you're giving it a task, and this task driven learning is what forms the entire premise of supervised learning. In the case of unsupervised learning, it is not that you're giving it certain tasks there, you're just giving it a lot of data and you're saying, hey, why don't you find out what are the common things that exist between apples, between bananas, between oranges, and then start learning what an apple looks like, what an orange looks like. So the next time I give you a ton of images, you have the capability to separate all of them out. And you can only separate all of them out if you know what is the fruit that you're looking at, right? So here, we use a lot of data-driven communication, data-driven learning with the case of unsupervised learning. So what about reinforcement learning then? Reinforcement learning, as we just discussed, it completely uses feedback-based learning. Just like all of us watching this particular video right now, including me, it uses past mistakes to get better and better and better. And once you have a chance to train it multiple times, it would have made all the mistakes that it can make, and it would realize that, hey, every time it can get more fast, more quicker, it is doing what? It is having less and less mistakes to work with. More and more accuracy is what it is giving us, and that's exactly what we are after. And the best part here is that you can also get better and better with machine learning. So to get to that, I would really ask you guys to take a second to hit that subscribe button, because there is a lot more content on the lines of machine learning, AI, and a lot of different domains that I've planned for you that I'm actively working on right away. And you can definitely use this chance to upskill yourself, get better, and understand all of these complex domains in a really simple fashion. So guys, with this episode of Learn with Anirudh, I hope to bring you a lot of clarity with all the types of machine learning that's out there. There is way more to this than what you saw right now. There's a lot of complexity there, and I'm going to bring you multiple ways, multiple videos to simplify even the most complex things that you can see. So I appreciate all of your support. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for giving your time into tuning into this episode, and I hope to see you on the next one. Thank you so much for watching.